Story 1. Once in my freshman year of high school, a kid I knew pushed me in line for no reason. I pushed him away from me after, and in response, he started punching the side of my head, clearly with the intent to actually hurt me. I was so stunned that he had jumped so quickly to attack me that I didn't even defend myself. Went from 0 to 100 real quick. A teacher stepped in right away and separated him from me. As you can expect, zero tolerance meant that both of us were to go to detention, citing that because I pushed back, I was just as much a cause for this despite me not doing any harm to him. My mother had to come pick me up because the staff did not want me there in the event his friends decided to come follow up, and my head was sore for about 3 days, both on the spot he hit and my head getting a headache from it. I went to the mandatory detention but found out my parents, both of whom are divorced, gave the school crap about how not only was I forced to go to detention, but how the other kid was let off with the same punishment, especially with myself having a clean record. The result was that they suspended the kid because of the pressure, and I grew to hate the school staff for my time there as a result. If my parents hadn't raised hell about their handling of it, he would have been back at school the following week, despite everything. Meaning he could have easily done it again and gotten me into worse trouble, despite the fact that there was a camera there and multiple people there who saw him do it. Zero tolerance is a way to get rid of a problem without addressing it, and it should not be used in every case. Amen to that. I had to go through something similar in middle school. There were a few times where I told a bully to shut up after whispering insults at me, but because the teacher only heard me say shut up, I was the one who had to apologize. My parents sent some pretty angry emails and phone calls, telling the school to quit their BS. Story 2. It was weird. My high school football team had a zero tolerance policy for drugs and alcohol. Makes sense, we are supposed to all be underage. But really, no one was ever caught. We go away on this training camp extended weekend thing. One of the new coaches was some guy who played college football. Everyone thought he was cool. He, of course, joined us, and I guess didn't know about the policy, and somehow it applied to coaches? All I know is maybe day 3 at breakfast, the coach makes an announcement that they sent the guy home because he was caught drinking the previous night and has zero tolerance. I still don't know what the F that was about, but that's what comes to mind. Story 3. My least favorite on campus was the no hat policy. Like, the majority were just kids who wanted to stick it to the man in the lamest way possible. Even worse, it also applied to hoods on jackets. In my class, I never stopped a kid from either, especially if they were well behaved or already finished their work. I never gave busy work if they finished early. However, every now and then, an admin would bust in and correct the situation, and every now and then I'd get chewed out for it. Big reason I left teaching in public schools. I cannot handle that level of bureaucratic nonsense that serves no purpose whatsoever. The miniskirt and tank top rules I get, but hats are such a dumb line in the sand to draw. I've been to several beginning of year meetings where all the uppity rule follower teachers had to clarify exactly what the rule was on the most minor stuff that didn't matter at all. Like, the state paid thousands of dollars for that nonsense meeting with hundreds of adults. Story 4. A guy at my job had been there for about 10 years. Everyone liked him, coworkers and supervisors alike. He rarely called off, worked hard, knew several jobs better than anyone else, etc. He smashed his finger one day and tore the nail off. When he went to get some bandages to clean and dress it, the supervisor made him go to the ER. He said he was fine and didn't need to go, but they took him anyway. Since it was a work injury, they made him take a drug urinalysis, which he failed. He knew he was going to fail it. That's why he didn't want to go to the ER. He had smoked some pot once earlier that week on his day off. Since the company has a zero tolerance policy, he was fired. The director of HR even told us, as his union reps, if he could find a loophole, he'd keep him. But corporate had the test results, so it was out of his hands. Story 5. One of my best friends got punched in the face at his old school. The guy who did it had no reason to do it at all. My friend is really shy, sweet, and is a punk kid. And you know what kids are like. They usually don't like different people. The head teacher didn't see anything except for the kid punching my friend and said he provoked him and believed the bully that my friend attacked first. Like, he was properly overreacting apparently and made my friend look like the bad one. He told the head teacher he didn't lay a finger on him, and the school threatened to suspend him for disrespecting staff and strong use of violence. My friend didn't like that, as he values his education and wants to be there every day to work his hardest, and wouldn't take being suspended for something he never did. I think he either dropped out and went to his current school, or the school actually suspended him and he dropped out after. Can't remember what he told me. The head teacher was a pretty snobby, money-loving idiot anyway, and gave no crap about how my friend felt about the whole situation and only cared about the school's reputation. It goes to show how dumb some head teachers can be. His mom was pretty pissed at the school because she knows her son wouldn't hurt anybody. Story 6. This story goes back to when I was in middle school. This was 6 years ago. I lived in a trailer park that was mostly inhabited with Hispanics, and our family was one of only a handful of white families in the neighborhood. I also have Asperger's, so the Hispanic kids would make fun of me by calling me retarded and various Spanish curse words, a lot of which I learned quickly. There was a kid in my neighborhood who was also white, and we learned he was pretty trashy. His name was Randy. Stereotypical trailer park trash, mind you. I was in 7th grade while he was in 8th. We were waiting outside near one of those big cluster post boxes for the bus to come pick us up, and Randy had come to me to talk some crap to me. Me being the non-provocative person I was, I played it cool and thought little of it, until he called me something that pissed me off, and I took it personally. "What are you gonna do about it?" were the last words I uttered from my mouth before he hit me square in the jaw with such force that it made me stumble back. I was shocked to say the least, but I didn't retaliate, and instead decided that the best course of action was to go back home and tell my grandma what had happened. She naturally told the school, and I was hoping he would be the one getting suspended. Instead, both of us were suspended for a week, and I was understandably furious about the decision before realizing the zero-tolerance policy. Life went on, and I grew up to be an intelligent and respectable kid in school, while Randy moved out my freshman year of high school. Hope I never have to see his face again. Story 7. A volunteer organization that was celebrating International Fun Day, or something like that, by greeting people coming into their building, handing out lollipops, and giving a high-five palm slap to anyone coming through the doors. Anyway, it was the height of the cold and flu season. Someone complained that it was spreading germs, and the activity was canceled. Story 8. One thing to be aware of is the no-tolerance policies have nothing to do with fairness, or assigning blame, or right or wrong, or victim or aggressor. None of it. It has to do with liability, period. By meting out the same punishment to both parties, they are divesting themselves of responsibility and blame for the situation. It's strictly to reduce lawsuits. It's quite literally counter to the purpose of education, but is working rather well toward indoctrinating those on the victim's side that those in power aren't there to support you, and those on the aggressor's side that their behavior isn't wrong since the other guy got the same punishment. Story 9. When I was in middle school, we had a ban on the word party. We were required to say celebration instead, due to the connotations associated with partying. The punishment was supposed to be instant suspension, but it was never enforced, since almost all the teachers thought the rule was idiotic. Jackets were banned as well, due to the potential to hide weapons. Story 10. I gave a presentation on an educational discipline theory a few weeks ago known as Kerwin-Mendler. This theory deals with as tough as necessary for punishment, instead of zero tolerance. A real-life example that my group presented on that we read in an essay on the theory goes something like this. A middle schooler's day started with his father threatening the life of him and his younger brother with a gun, going so far as to force the barrel of the gun into the brother's mouth. The father passes out due to alcohol. The kid brings the gun to school in an effort to get it away from his father and turn it into an authority that can help. However, the kid is discovered with the gun before he can turn it in, and is expelled as a result, as that is the response according to zero-tolerance policy. Story 11. This was a long time ago, right when the zero-tolerance policy started. The principal of the school hated me, and I was a completely belligerent smartass to him. He would search me nearly every other day, saying someone said I had drugs. I never did. One day he found a butter knife from the cafeteria in my lunch. I brought my own lunch to school, and the butter knife likely got mixed in with what I brought from home. He called the police and dragged my parents down, saying I was walking around school with a weapon, and he could have me arrested and expelled for possessing a weapon. My father looked like he was going to strangle the guy, but my mother sat there, quietly listening. When the principal said that they wanted to charge me and that the police would be taking me downtown for processing, my mother calmly said, "If you're going to arrest my son for possession of a weapon, I am going to press charges and sue you for providing my son with a weapon." There was a minute of awkward silence. The principal tried to spin it to just give me a 3-day suspension. My mother's response was simply, "No." Story 12. The first time I ever got suspended in school was because of this zero-tolerance fighting crap. A guy cornered me in a soundproof music room. He raised his hands to hit me, so I busted his nose and ran. I got suspended for fighting, and they asked if it wasn't fighting, then why did I scream? In the soundproof music room. Nothing happened to the guy. Second time was because I got a really crappy and scary diagnosis. Ended up being a misdiagnosis, and a kid that frequently tormented me was doing so in the classroom. The rest of the class joined in, and I told them to shut the F up. Teacher suspended me 3 days before the end of my senior year because I cussed, which she did all the time, and I had to take all the exams that I was exempt from, even though I explained what was going on, including my diagnosis. Nothing happened to anyone else. Still got a scholarship for my grades, though. Story 13. When I was in high school, I was once taking a poop in the bathroom stall when some kids came in and started sharing a cigarette. A school authority member, I forget who it was, came in and insisted everyone was guilty for being present. I was taken in with the rest of them. In a strange bit of luck, the construction company my father worked for was installing a recycled/reclaimed water system for watering in the exact neighborhood of my high school that night. The next morning, we had a meeting with the assistant principal of the school to discuss my week-long suspension for smoking. He basically explained to the assistant school principal, and then the school principal, that the water was turned off in my school until they completed the project, and he was prepared to spend all day defending my innocence before turning the water back on in the school, meaning they could meet his demands to not suspend me or face having to shut down the school for the day, since the water fountains, toilets, and general plumbing wouldn't work until he approved the project and we came to a reasonable solution to the problem. And they would basically have to shut down the school until the problem was resolved. They agreed to in-home suspension where I could still complete all classwork and tests during that time. The normal standard was that suspended students would receive 0 credit for any work assigned or tests while they were suspended. I went home, did the classwork and homework and tests in a few hours, and got to spend the rest of the week playing video games. Story 14. Catholic school. Zero-tolerance nail polish. A girl I knew put on a coat of clear polish that prevents you from biting your nails because of how gross it tastes, and they nearly had her expelled. Millions more examples of them making a scene over nothing, but this one sticks out the most. Story 15. I got a call from my sister-in-law on the night of my nephew's junior prom. She's really upset. She needs someone to come with her to pick up my nephew's car and drive it home, because the school called her to come pick him up, as they wouldn't let him and his girlfriend into the prom, as they said they believed he had been drinking. Zero-tolerance policy for school functions. Sure, that's not unreasonable. She's furious with her son. We get there to where they are holding the prom, and they've pulled my nephew and his girlfriend aside and have them waiting just outside the entrance, where all the students are passing them to go in. He comes up right away to the car, and he is pissed. He also looked remarkably sober for someone who had been supposedly drinking. She tells his girlfriend and him to wait in the car while she talks to the administration. The school employees then explain that they saw him trip slightly in the parking lot while walking up, and that he fumbled with his wallet while getting his ticket and ID out at the door. We wait for the part where he's been caught drinking. Nope, that's it. Oh, and he's also suspended now. What? Did anyone see him drink? No. Did he smell like alcohol? No. Can he take a breathalyzer? No, they don't have one. His crime was apparently being a really tall, gangly, graceless teenager. She's not as upset with the nephew now as the people in charge of this thing. He is adamantly claiming innocence, so we go to the emergency room, the only place open, to get a blood draw to test for alcohol, which she paid for out of pocket. They did let him back in school before the whole 10-day suspension was up, when the results came back negative for everything. Next year, he skipped the senior prom. Story 16. I got written up at my last job for racism. Much of my team was from Mexico, born and raised. I called them Mexicans, and one of my female white employees reported me to HR. who then came and gave me a severe chewing out and a write-up on my permanent record. When asked what I should call people from Mexico, the head of HR replied, "I don't know, but you can't call them that." When I said, "Don't you find it strange that you find the term Mexican to be offensive?" he threatened to fire me then and there. Story 17. My school district's zero-tolerance bully policy. Zero tolerance to them means if it happens since kindergarten and goes on almost every week to the same kid, and that kid is now in middle school and almost high school, then just leave the situation alone. My baby brother has been beaten up, literally jumped on, threatened with knives, told multiple times to go kill himself, told he is gay and should go kill himself, threatened with beatings, things stolen from him, food stolen from him, etc. He is the nicest kid you could ever meet. He's even tried to just make friends with the bullies, without any positive results. The times that he's defended himself in physical altercations, he's been punished just as the bully has. Once in elementary, the bully was the school counselor's son. When the son told him multiple times he should jump off a bridge and kill himself, the counselor told my mom something like, "Oh, he didn't mean to say that, he was just joking." Like, what the F? You're the counselor. You're the person kids are supposed to be able to come to in times of need. But you're sitting over there in your office in La La Land thinking this is all a joke. Just last week, I was told my brother got punched in the arm for some reason by the same guys who have been bullying him. My mom told me he was crying and begging her not to take him to school. A first, if I recall correctly. School said they would call her back about the situation of the hitting last week, and have yet to call her. I don't know how he can still come home and laugh and smile with us. I love him so much, and it infuriates me that our schools have done not a damn single thing about this since he's been in kindergarten. Edit. Okay, so the most recent incident, which was some kid hitting him and threatening him, my mom just told me they got kicked off campus. Don't know if that means they were suspended or expelled or what. I'm taking everyone's answers into consideration. This is something we've been dealing with for a long time. My mother has talked to multiple principals over the years, crying to them about how she doesn't want her child to end up committing suicide because of the bullying. Some small actions have been taken here or there, but it's a struggle. Our school district is completely backwards, as in the school board, so it's hard to get anything done. We've even considered changing schools from public to private, and even homeschooling, but haven't decided anything concrete yet. Thing is, my other brother and I both went through bullying too. Not nearly as bad as what our baby brother is getting, but this is not my mom's first rodeo. We'll see what comes of this incident and then take further steps. Story 18. I had a pair of headphones confiscated after some idiot saw the cord sticking out of my backpack and told the teacher. Why was the cord visible? It had fallen out while I was looking for a pen. I didn't have them plugged into anything, but didn't trust a cheap master lock combo lock to protect $100 worth of electronics. Especially since my locker had already been broken into twice that year. For me, it's a toss-up between that and almost getting expelled for having a copy of American Rifleman on me, which I had brought in because there was an article in it relevant to whatever the hell we were talking about in history that week. If I remember correctly, the article was on the 2 Colt Browning MGs that the Rough Riders took with them to Cuba.
Story 1. The 3-year-old daughter had to watch this VHS tape of a live Fleetwood Mac concert before bed. I was like, okay, cute. That's adorable. 3-year-olds love the weirdest things. She's so quirky, and this will be fun. But she didn't love it. She always wanted to watch Land Before Time instead, but it was always on the note left for me, like pager number, pediatrician, chicken soup for dinner is in the fridge, and watch Fleetwood Mac at 6:30 before bed. Obviously, the family eventually found out I wasn't making her watch it, as I had no fucking reason to believe it was a secret. They were clearly upset by this, and I was never called back to babysit, so that was weird. Story 2. Not a rule, but a single mom once told me to use the bat by the door in the event the kid's father comes by and tries to take them. That was pretty weird and uncomfortable. Story 3. I was 13 and was babysitting my neighbor's kids. It was my first time, so the parents walked me through all the rules about the bathroom and TV and food and bedtime, etc. Just as the parents were taking off for the night, the mom came back in and whispered to me, "Don't go in the basement." As a teenager in the 80s, my mind went to all the scariest movies that had basements. I avoided the door to the basement all night until I had to put the kids to bed. Then I walked slowly to the door and put my ear against it. I heard what sounded like whimpering, and then it sounded like a sad laugh. I ran to the couch and started watching TV to get my mind off of it. But then I heard something fall in the basement, and I knew someone was down there. I really don't know how I got the courage or stupidity to do it, but I went over and opened the door. The whining instantly got louder. I went down just 3 or 4 stairs so I could peek down, and I saw a goat. Not a ghost, a goat. As soon as the goat saw me, he started bleating loudly. It scared the crap out of me. I went upstairs and the goat was still bleating loudly, so much that it woke up the kids. The oldest girl came out and said, "Did you open the door to the basement?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She asked, "When you do that, Carlos thinks you're going to feed him and he starts yelling." Thank God I knew it was a goat first, because if she had said that before I went down, I would have thought Carlos was some kidnapped person in the basement who would yell for food. It became very funny to me. The mom came home and I told her what happened, and she almost died laughing. They were repairing the goat pen and had to keep him in the basement for a few days. I still remember every moment of that night vividly. I think she told me not to go into the basement that way either to mess with me, or she was so used to telling her daughters not to go down there that she didn't even think of how creepy it would sound to someone else. I bet that goat was probably driving her crazy over the last week. Story 4. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the family gave me instructions to let their kids drink chocolate milk, which they were otherwise not allowed to have. I think they wanted their kids to associate babysitter time with fun time, so the parents could go out more often. Seeming to work out well for them, the kids both grew up to be successful people. Story 5. The mom had me put her kids in the car seats and sit in the driveway with all the car doors open while she just hung out inside the house. 5 hours of me standing in the driveway, watching them sit inside their car. Never returned. As for people asking why I didn't take them somewhere, she specifically asked me to just sit in the driveway with them. I also didn't have my driver's license yet, so I couldn't have taken them anywhere even if I wanted to. The kids were twins who were 4 years old, I think. They were weirdly well behaved and didn't complain about what we were doing. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing inside or why she didn't just let them play in the yard. I am just as confused as you. Story 6. I used to babysit for this family when I was in high school, in the 80s, and they had no books or reading material of any kind, except that there would usually be like 2 sections of the Wall Street Journal and a running magazine lying around. No books. Anyway, once I went over there, and the mom told me like 9 times, begged me, not to eat the box of Nilla wafers that was in the cupboard because she needed them for a recipe the next day. Begged. I was like, okay, got it. They're totally safe because I don't even like vanilla wafers. She kept mentioning it, and it was the first thing she asked me about when they got home. Story 7. I had to put the kids to sleep with the CD player going. That wasn't the weird part. It was a recording of their parents basically going, "Molly, you are wonderful. You are a star. You are going to shine bright." That isn't super weird, but it was like several hours long, and apparently they listened to it every night. Story 8. Asked me to drive their 3-year-old twins around in my personal vehicle for 2.5 hours because that's the only way they can nap. No, I simply put the kids in their beds, closed the door, and they were asleep in 15 minutes. Story 9. I used to regularly babysit one of my younger cousins. At nap time, I had to put her in a zip-up pajama with feet. I then had to duct tape the zipper down and duct tape the wrists in a way that wasn't restricting, but she couldn't pull her hands into her onesie. If I didn't do this, she would pull her hands in and dig in her diaper. Always. My aunt got tired of cleaning poop-covered walls regularly. Story 10. Hippie family. The 2-year-old had no bedtime and no rules. She can eat what she wants, no bedtime, and if she falls asleep, leave her wherever she crashed. The parents came home at 2:30 to a toddler eating chocolate cake on the couch, with her preferred American Pickers on TV. That's fine, apparently. 6 months later, the mom is very pregnant and asked that when the baby is born, if I could wrangle the toddler while the mom gives birth in a bathtub at home. The 2-year-old was in the room, watching, while I explained what's happening. I left that evening when the parents came home, fried chicken in the toddler's hand, keeping up with the Kardashians on TV, and denied their next request to come sit. As a 20-year-old, I wasn't prepared to see the mess of someone else's home birth. Story 11. I babysat my 4 cousins once, aged maybe 8 to 12. One night, they all asked for me to read a story, so I happily obliged. When I told my aunt, she replied, "They're much too old for that. Why did you do it?" Well, if the kids want a story, I'll read them a story. Why the hell not? I've read stories to my 35-plus husband before. In the car, though, not before bedtime. My aunt isn't evil and isn't someone who would put her kids in front of some trashy reality show. They're an upper-middle-class, well-educated family. In fact, my uncle collects amazing, mostly European, graphic novels, and the kids have always had access to culture. Books, museums, concerts. I think my aunt just meant something like, "You didn't have to do that," and how odd of them. She doesn't have any filter and is usually quite blunt. Maybe the kids never asked her to read them? Then again, yeah, in the end, it just sounded wrong, but chill. Story 12 once had me feed her 1-year-old only from a freshly opened baby food container. If she only ate 2 or 3 spoonfuls, I was to throw it away, and when she wanted more in 15 minutes, I was to open a new one. I thought it was so she would finish her meal and be full for a while, but she said it was okay to feed her whenever she wanted. I would probably throw away 5 or 6 jars in a 2-hour sitting. They cost more than I usually made for sitting. Story 13. Not a rule, as I only went there once, but a very odd request. I used to work housekeeping at a hospital. A doctor that was frequently on the floor that I worked on asked me if I could watch his kids on Saturdays. He had 3 toddlers, ages 2, 3, and 4. His wife didn't work, but wanted time to go shopping and get her hair and nails done. I totally understand, as my son was 4. I was also allowed to bring him. I get there early as the doctor is getting ready to leave. He says he's cooking breakfast, and while he gets the kids fed and dresses, could I help change his wife's tampon? She'd drunk a lot the night before and was completely passed out and was leaking and messing up their sheets. He's a doctor. I told him I should work for someone more than a few minutes before I go rummaging in their private parts, and that I'd tend to the kids if he tended to his wife. What I really wanted to do was leave, but the kids would be home alone with their hungover mother, so I chose to finish cooking and stay. He went upstairs and sent the kids to the kitchen where I was putting food on plates. After a little while, he popped his head in and said it was a short day. He was done upstairs and he was leaving. I never met the wife. He came home at noon, gave me $100, and I never spoke to him again. Story 14. Only 2 hours of reading time. To be fair, the mom was a librarian and her 2 kids were adorably nerdy. They had an entire room filled with books, and even then we'd make trips to the library from time to time. The rest of the time was supposed to be outside or doing some activity. It was a super sweet deal too, because she paid for not only her kids to have a pool pass, but me as well. So we basically went every day all summer, and we would play in the pool. Story 15. When I was about 14, some friends of my parents asked me to babysit their 9 or 10 sons who wanted a boy babysitter. When I got to their house, the mom told me that her son loved poached eggs and asked me to make him a poached egg on toast for dinner. She quickly explained to me how to make it as if it were something really simple and easy. Later that night, after wasting half their eggs in a hopeless effort to make a poached egg, I asked the kid if he liked scrambled eggs. He said he loved scrambled eggs and ate them without complaint. When the parents came home, I apologized for using up their eggs. They laughed and seemed to appreciate the effort, although the mom explained it again and insisted that it was really simple. I'm almost 40 now, and I still suck at making poached eggs, and it cracks me up that the mom thought a 14-year-old should be able to whip one up based on a few instructions. On the other hand, as a parent, I appreciate the hell out of that kid. Story 16. I was babysitting a 3 or 4-ish-year-old girl and an 18-month-old boy. The boy had to be carried in a buggy, which is all very well, but I was supposed to add some kind of mini stairs, 2 steps, on the back of it so the girl could stand on it, because her legs get tired, said parents while making quotation marks with their fingers. The damn thing hit my legs every time I took a step. That kid was also taught to not wait and look for restrooms when she needed to go, and proceeded one time to take a shit in a public garden and wipe herself with a leaf with an ease that certified me that wasn't her first time. Story 17. The mother asked me to stop by the house to meet her 2-year-old son a week before I was supposed to babysit him for the first time. I pulled up to the house and saw that the young boy was standing at the glass front door with a t-shirt on and nothing else. I went in, and I must have given the child a strange look, because the mom started to explain that her son doesn't like to wear pants, so they let him run around pantsless with no diaper on, though he isn't potty trained. I told her that this made me uncomfortable, and asked if I could put pants on him when I was watching him, and she got upset with me and said they don't like to make their 2-year-old son do anything he doesn't like to do. So they let him run around without pants on, which unfortunately means he goes to the bathroom on the floor since he won't wear a diaper and he isn't potty trained. Story 18. Don't let the kids have the brownies on top of the cabinet. They were special brownies. I was more than welcome to take some home with me, though. Not a weird rule necessarily, actually a pretty solid and generous rule. It just cracked me up when they told me that. Was not in a state where marijuana is legal in any way. Story 19. Refused to let their kids eat raw veggies for absolutely no reason. They never told me this, so I gave the kids ages 5 to 7 raw, washed, and cut broccoli with some ranch for a snack. They were happily eating as the mom was getting ready for a party. She walked by, saw the kids eating the broccoli, took it from them, microwaved it, and said they like it much better this way. The kids did not like it better, and even though it was weird, I was then instructed to never give them raw veggies. I could understand if they were toddlers still learning to chew, but these kids were plenty old enough to chew broccoli florets without choking. Story 20. When I was a kid, I got paid $75 a week to watch 2 boys over a summer. It was amazing money, but the dad was a big bow hunter, and he made loads of deer chili, and he insisted that his 10-year-old and 2-year-old eat tons of it. They loved it, but the 2-year-old would take these massive, awful, horrible, nasty chili shits constantly. The dad explained all this to me, and my instructions were to just put him in the shower and hose him down. I was offered plenty of chili, but never ate any. Story 21. One parent said I had to read a Bible passage during dinner and for a bedtime story. I also had to use christening discipline methods. To this day, I have no idea what she meant, but if the kids acted out, I would just say, "Would the Lord like you doing that?" Had to make the kids pray every 15 minutes. I thought it was a bit much, but gotta respect it. Another one said I had to do this really complicated skincare routine. Maybe the kid's skin is sensitive. No, the kid was fine. The mother was just obsessed with that whole glass skin fad. Story 22. I never really had any rules to follow, but I did have one terrible mother. The mom asked me to babysit her 3 kids overnight. As I was in high school, I couldn't do it, so she said she could be back by 9 p.m. I figured it was fine and let my mom know, even though they only lived a few houses away. The kids were great. We played around, watched a movie, I fed them and put them to bed. 9 p.m. rolled around and the mom was nowhere to be found. She hadn't left a number to reach her, and I figure she was just running behind. I cleaned up and watched some TV while waiting for her. 10 p.m. hits, not home. 11 p.m., nope. Finally, at around 12 p.m., I called my mom. I explained what's up, that I'm tired and have school in the morning, etc. She agrees to come and stay away from the house with the kids till their mom shows up. Turns out she didn't come home until around 10 a.m. the next morning, long after my mom had called CPS. She gave my mom $20 for 16 hours of babysitting. None of the neighborhood kids were allowed to babysit for her after that. Story 23. This was way back in the mid-90s. Remember before we had DVR and all that jazz, and the only way to see what was currently on each channel was to whip out your TV guide or bring up the TV guide channel on your TV and watch the scrolling bars until you found something decent? In the early and mid-90s, advertisers figured out that the TV guide channel was a great advertising medium and would show ads on the top right of the screen and compress the scrolling shows playing now. The parents wouldn't allow me to turn on that channel because of the questionable content of the ads for things like laundry detergent or PG movie previews. The kids were 8 and 11 and were allowed to watch only a very select subset of shows that were usually geared towards kids 5 years younger than them. Nickelodeon was banned in that house, as were the words shucks, hate, and darn. Story 24. Not necessarily a rule, but the first time I went to their house, they told me about their daughter's very serious peanut allergy and walked me through the EpiPen, prevention, phone numbers of their neighbors who were doctors. All fine so far. I took this very seriously. But then the mother puts her hands on my shoulders and said, "If she dies, we won't blame you. It won't be your fault." While I appreciate the thought, This freaked me the hell out, and I was 100 times less comfortable. Story 25. I'm a professional nanny, and one of the families I worked for had a strict no games rule. Not as in video games, but as in any game that could have a winner and a loser. No board games, no tag, nothing. Winning and losing leads to hurt feelings, was their explanation. I'd have to stop the girls anytime they said something like, "I bet I can get to the end of the driveway faster," and remind them, Mom and Dad say no competition, remember? Everything had to be perfectly equal or the parents would lose it completely. I fired them as clients shortly after. Story 26. No calling the radio station. This was after I'd let their 10-year-old daughter call a local radio station to ask the DJ who we thought was hotter, Garth Brooks or Alan Jackson. The DJ, as I recall, told the kid to fuck off and hung up. This was also during the early 90s, when Garth Brooks was kinda cute and looked less like a potato in a cowboy hat, and Alan Jackson was panty-dropping smoking hot.